Well, happy Thanksgiving Eve to you. Roger Wallace sitting in for Craig Way. Happy to join you from Pluckers on this final week of the regular season. We'll visit with Tom Herman, but as we always do, we like to introduce a staff member. And today, so happy to have the Director of Player Personnel with us, Derek Chang. And Derek, before we get to the responsibilities, because this is a key time of year for you guys, let's talk about your journey here, because it's full circle. A UT grad, and you get to come back to Austin as an employee of the Texas football program.
It's been unbelievable, totally full circle, and I don't even know if we're going to talk about this, but I actually interned with Roger in 2004, and
got you to decide you didn't want to get in the business.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm sure at that point you probably thought I was hopeless and without a future, but look at, 13 years later, we actually made it somewhere. So yeah.
No, there was never a doubt you were going to be great at whatever you did, and from there, you did actually have a career in media, which is so interesting because that kind of took you into the world of college football at ESPN.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I was a communications major here in 2004 and graduated with a communications degree and was an absolute sports nut. I was an avid sports fan and loved everything about it. And I actually ended up, interviewing with ESPN. They came to our career fair here, and then I interviewed with them. And, it's actually funny. I don't know if I ever told you this story. My interview with ESPN, so I had taken a communications class and an interview class, and they had prepped you in an interview, in a job interview. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? When is the time that you overcame adversity or whatever it was? My very first question in my ESPN interview was, what's the starting lineup for the Chicago White Sox? And it was entirely like a 5-10 minute interview all about sports questions. And anyway, I went up to ESPN and worked there for 8 years, and it was a great time. And that's kind of how I got started in this.
And then your relationship with Tom Herman took off at Ohio State. Kind of take us through that and to Houston, et cetera.
Yeah, so after working at ESPN for about 8 years, I actually was pretty fortunate to work with Urban Meyer my last year at ESPN. I was assigned to be his producer. This is in between when he was at Florida and Ohio State. So I was assigned to be his producer for about 9 months when he worked on College Game Day. And what a rich and special experience that was. And when he went to Ohio State as the head coach, I asked him if can I go along and just kind of learn football and be a part of what you're doing there in that program. And he looked at me and sized me up and said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And over, the course of 3 months, I respectfully and relatively persistently asked him, can I go out there and just learn? I wanted to learn, and I did, and went out to Ohio State. Eventually, he relented, after signing day there. And then I was at Ohio State for 2.5 years and got to meet Coach Herman when I was there. And this, I don't have a background in football. I didn't play and I didn't coach. But to speak of the man that Coach Herman is, I asked him early on there, I said, can I sit in your meeting room and just so I can learn? I can just, I won't say a word, I won't bother you, but can I sit in your room and learn about the sport? And he said, sure, no problem. And so every day for 2.5 years, I sat in his quarterback meeting room and didn't say a word except when he maybe asked me to tell a really bad joke to start the meeting, and then did that and learn. And think about this for a second, too. Coach Herman, in that room, you had the dork on the side, which is me, but you had Coach Herman, you had Cardell Jones, J.T. Barrett, Braxton Miller, and Kenny Guyton. I mean, what an unbelievable group of quarterbacks that is, and it was a special time.
Well, let's talk about your responsibilities here, because as we mentioned at the top, we're getting to it. The early signing period, first of all, that starts in just over a month. How has that kind of changed, not your job, but the landscape of recruiting?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, I think, for everyone who's involved in college football. It's going to be uncharted waters for sure. To me, it's going to be just an absolute sprint for the next 3 weeks. I think it's going to change the entire dynamic of college football recruiting. It's signing day. Originally is in the first week of February. Now it's in about less than a month. And so our coaches, think about this for a second. We're going to play a game in about 2 days, or I don't know when this show is going to air, but we're going to play a game on Friday. And then, we have some official visits this weekend. So our coach is going to be recruiting on campus on Saturday and Sunday morning. Then they're going to get on a plane and hit the road and go on the road for 3 weeks straight up until signing day, till really, a couple days before signing day and be on the road. So it's going to be an absolute sprint. I think it's going to change the entire dynamic of how recruiting works, and I know we're prepared for it, but it's going to be kind of, again, uncharted waters, and to see how it goes.
That's your savvy media background, talking about when the show's going to air.
Yeah, exactly. I have a little bit of background in that. Yeah.
All right, recruiting visits, recruiting evaluation. Kind of give us a thumbnail of your responsibilities in those two areas.
Yeah, visits. Recruiting it's unbelievable because it's so many different seasons within a calendar year. Right now, we're in the middle of a lot of visits, and I don't want to bore your audience with details, but right now we're in a lot of official visits. So
I don't know if you know this, but recruiting's a big deal.
Is it? Yeah, there's a couple people who follow it. Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah, but right now, so official visits happen during the fall and during the season, so we can actually pay for seniors in high school to for their transportation, for their lodging, for their meals. So they're wined and dined, and they get a lot of things that I never did in high school because I was a terrible athlete. I was not an athlete. So, but that's what the visits are, and I have an unbelievable recruiting department and staff, and everyone actually in our program in some capacity touches recruiting. So I guess I would kind of equate it to almost being an air traffic controller at times, and just directing traffic. Obviously, with a lot of assistance from a lot of our staff, Brian Carrington, John Michael Jones, and Justin Wright, and some really talented people, and just kind of making sure the visits are all exactly to the standard of what University of Texas football needs to be. And so it's a lot of logistics, a lot of planning, and a lot of execution, obviously, during the weekends. And then for each kid that comes, they all need to have a different tailor-made experience of this university. Some, interests are different in terms of academics, in terms of where they came from. They may be coming from a small town or a big city, and so we got to make sure we are completely cognizant of what their needs are here and what they want to learn. In terms of recruiting evaluation, the NCAA is really specific, and by the letter of law, I can only do so much with film and all that. So what I try and do with that is organize our film and just complement and supplement what our coaches need in those things. And so, but our coaches are the ones who are in the trenches of recruiting every single day, talking to these kids and making the evaluations. And our staff does a terrific job with that.
Social media has become such a big part of recruiting, and I know you're heavily involved, but kind of explain the importance because of the high school kids, and they live on their devices.
Yeah, they do. And while we're doing that, let's just Chang10 is my Twitter handle, so we just get some more followers here, hopefully, or probably will lose several. Get this too. When I used to tweet stuff periodically, I would actually lose several followers every time I would tweet something.
Didn't like your buckets?
I gotta maybe come up with something new. But yeah, social media, man, it's changed completely the landscape of recruiting in the last, I don't even want to say several years, the last couple years. It's for us, the University of Texas, our footprint is always going to be the state of Texas. I mean, this is our home, and there's no better state in the country for high school football, and we have terrific relationships with the coaches here who are unquestionably the best in the country. But what it does is for us to put our brand to any person who has a phone and device, and so we can get, if a kid in Delaware can get the same exposure to our program and learn about all the different things in our program and all the different, just the strengths that we have. And same with a kid in Texas, really. That's why you see so many different programs that now populate the state and recruit the state, as opposed to 10 years ago. It's because of just the access these kids have on their phones as to the exposure of these programs.
Well, I'm sure Coach wants you back in the lab where you belong, so we're
absolutely
going to cut you free. But, Derek, this has been so much fun, especially on a personal level, the fact that you and I kind of come full circle up here. But it's been a blast, and appreciate your time, and enjoy the holiday, what you get of it before the weekend.
Thanks, Roger.
That's the Director of Player Personnel, Derek Chang. We're just getting started here from Pluckers. Longhorn Weekly with Tom Herman continues, presented by the Texas Lottery. Alongside the head coach, Tom Herman, and we got to talk about Derek a little bit. we heard his story. Now let's get your side of the story. But it's really cool that a UT grad gets to come back and be part of the program. And I know he's a valuable member of your staff.
Yeah, it's hearing him talk, it is amazing how kind of that side of college football has evolved, and his job didn't exist 10 years ago. And, in fact, when we got here, very, very few jobs in that area existed. And, thankfully to Mike Perrin and Greg Fenvis, we were able to add a couple new jobs. And but he's invaluable because the organization of that department, if you will, or sub-department of football, is not something that a coach can do anymore. Gone are the days where you had, like when I was here 20 years ago, you had Hardy McCrary, who was the recruiting coordinator, and he handled he was also the defensive ends coach too, but he also handled all the travel organization. He handled the high school coaches. He handled everything. But nowadays, it's so specific and so time-consuming that you really do. You need an army and a department. And Nick Saban was kind of the first at Alabama to kind of grow that side of things, and a lot of people to keep pace have had to do the same.
We're coming up on a year, Saturday, Sunday, when you were introduced as head coach, and to think that you had to try to hold on to a recruiting class, enhance a recruiting class. And I know you guys are always recruiting down the road. What kind of handcuffs did you have to kind of wiggle through to navigate not only the present but the future and what can't ever end recruiting?
Yeah, recruiting's like shaving, right? You don't do it for a couple days and you wake up and you look like a fool, unless you're trying to grow a beard or something. But no, it's that first recruiting class. I think we, and under the direction of Derek, really, we handled the organization of it about as good as you can because, coming off the worst 3-year stretch in the history of Texas football. Coming in new, getting here and only having a week really to go on the road recruiting, and then a lot of these kids are now graduating early. 3 of the top 10 players in the state of Texas graduated high school early, and they were already enrolled at different schools in January. So you don't have any time to build relationships with these kids, and so rather than stretch and take kids that probably aren't going to play for Texas, we took a lot of kids that we believed in our evaluation, but we held some back. We weren't going to, because as the adage goes, it's not the kid that you lose to A&M or to Oklahoma that beat you. You only got to play those guys once a year, if that at all. It's the ones that you take in your program that aren't good fits that wind up not playing or bad apples, if you will. And so we were very selective and knew that we wanted to, make sure that they were our kind of kid.
And now we're the new era of early signing. How does that kind of change things for you guys?
We're learning on the fly. This is we're going to have most of our signing class signed on December 20th. The issue is we've got bowl practice, and you've only got 3 weeks, really, so 15 days, the 5 days during the week to make these home visits. And so you do the math. If we sign 20 kids on December 20th, long story short, we're going to have multiple kids sign on December 20th, and the head coach will not even have gone into their home for a home visit yet. And then they'll sign, and I'll go back out in January, and we'll go through the whole home visit deal, and I'll eat mom's pasta and all that good stuff. But it's just really weird how all of that is shaping up, and the good thing is nobody's at an advantage or disadvantage. We're all kind of learning on the fly as we go.
All right, well, you got a game this week, so maybe we should.
I heard about that.
At least,
yeah.
You guys are just off the practice field. I love the non-Saturday game because you guys have to talk in that Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesday. But
always.
How big is it? Because it's the 12th game, so it's not only a condensed week, but everybody's beat up.
It really kind of tested the management of the practice week because like you said, it's a short week and you're as depleted as you've ever been probably from an injury standpoint. But luckily at Houston, both of our last games of the season were short weeks on a Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. So we had a little experience with that. The first year we beat Navy at home to clinch the American Conference West and played really well. And so just trying to follow, the format of what works. And we know the way that we prepare on that short week 12 works. So we kind of stuck with that model. So we've had a little experience with it, but what it really tests is your kids' maturity level. Are they able to handle because we have pretty physical practices, as physical as you'll find in the country, but except for this week, this is because it's just not prudent, it's not smart, so we'll find out Friday if our kids are mature enough to have a very non-physical week of practice, but still go out on Friday and pop some pads around.
When you make those decisions as a head coach, this is your 3rd year as a head coach, so you call on your experience, but you have to make some things on your own and decide this is the way I think it's done. How does that evolve in your background and what becomes your style?
Well, I've been blessed to work for some really good head coaches, and Urban Meyer and Paul Rhodes and David Bailiff, and the list is long. And so you take something from each of those guys, and you try to apply it to your own personality. But a lot of the structure or the details of kind of scheduling and practice schedules and all that are the things that I thought were the best of the different places that I've gone. And much like everything in football, there's not a whole lot of original ideas, right? I mean, it's more adaptations of good ideas that you've been a part of. And so that's really the genesis of how we kind of evolved to where we are now in terms of our practice schedules.
All right, we're kind of winding around here. There was a pretty big effort on Saturday, and we want to talk about not just the game, but the reaction, because I know for you that's priceless to see your kids. So we're going to take a break, come back, and do that as Longhorn Weekly with Tom Herman continues live from Pluckers, the West Campus location.
The play clock down to 1 second. He has it, turns, throws to the left, ball caught. Kendall Moore, touchdown Texas. Kendall Moore, his first touchdown as a Texas Longhorn.
That's how the scoring started in the win against West Virginia. We're back at Pluckers. Roger Wallace alongside the head coach, Tom Herman. Oh, what a great story right there. I mean, you guys are depleted at tight end. And then Kendall Moore, the graduate transfer from Syracuse, makes a nice catch, makes a little move at about the 2 and gets in the end zone. And you've talked so much. On the road, get a quick start, and I know that was a nice way to start.
It was huge, yeah. Our defense has been carrying us, and what an unbelievable goal line stand that was. And I don't say that it's you never want the kid to get injured the way that Will Greer got injured, and we certainly feel for him. But the fact that we were able to keep him out of the end zone and actually turn the ball over and give it back to our offense was crucial. And then our offense got on a little roll there in the second quarter. And, yeah, I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, you do the math. If Andrew Beck was our first tight end and Garrett Gray was our second tight end, then that makes Cade Brewer our third tight end, and that makes Kendall Moore our fourth tight end. So we're playing with our fourth-string tight end against one of the top 25 teams in the country on the road. And he came up big and really – didn't really know he was going to play all that much either, because Cade's injury happened on Thursday, and just a freak non-contact deal, just planted wrong, and so Coach Meekins had some emergency tight end meetings with Kendall and Chris, and those guys came out and played really, really well.
Well, let's talk about 55 a little bit, and not so much the X's and O's. We know how good he is, but what does he bring? Just from, hey, our guy's back, our leader's back on the line. Yeah,
there's a lot of that. I think, the confidence that he brings. I think probably the biggest thing, and I know this as a play caller, former play caller, that you get so hamstrung in terms of what plays you can call, because all good play callers and all good offensive coaches, you can look at a defense and say, okay, I like this play versus that. Right? Okay, this is what they do. I like these certain plays versus that structure of defense. But then when you're as inexperienced and youthful at that position as we have been for most of the year, then it comes to, well, I like these things against that defense, but we can't block that guy. We got to double team this guy, or we got to put a fullback on that guy, or and so what having Connor allows you to do is not worry about the matchup problem. Connor doesn't have a matchup problem with really anybody that we play, and so you can look at a defense as a play caller and say, okay, I like this, so let's run this because we know our guy can block their guy. And so more times than not, obviously he's not he's not going to be 100%, and no O-lineman is, but you don't worry about the matchup issues that we've had to worry about for so many weeks.
I want to go back to the play when they stopped Will Greer, because you've talked all along about play as hard as you can, and you want the hardest playing team. And sometimes you can watch a game and maybe you can tell, maybe you can if you're not a trained eye. But I think of a couple plays. I think of Oklahoma State down on the goal line, and I think of that play. And those are tangible moments where you say, holy cow, I mean, you kept Oklahoma State out of the end zone. You keep West Virginia, change the entire complexion of the game. As a staff, I mean, you can ask a guy to play hard, but they got to do it. You've instilled something in these guys.
Yeah, that's it's the thing I'm proudest the most of in our short 12 months here is that we have established a culture where playing really, really hard and playing really physical is cool. And I think at a lot of places, it's cool to be the showboater. It's cool to only go hard when you feel like it, or it's acceptable. Where this now has become a way of life, especially on defense, and so much so that it's not. We talked a lot early in the year that we had to go from a player or a coach-fed team to a player-led team, and I think now. The effort is one of those things that is player-led. You can't, if you get on that field on defense and you take a lazy step, you're going to get called out by about 6 or 7 dudes, and that's the way it should be. That's the way good defenses are played. That's the way good teams are. That it's just so amazing to me that part of football, in my opinion, is slowly dying, and I worry about the future of our game a little bit with all this. The rise of 7-on-7 and all the different ways of really dephysicalizing. Is that a word?
It is now.
It is now. Yeah. That we've done to our game, but yet you look at the teams that win and win big and win championships. They all play great defense, and it's never going to change, or at least I hope it never changes, because we feel like we have something that a lot of teams don't have, and it gives us a chance, despite any talent discrepancies, which we certainly have some on offense. When you lose as many quality players as we did throughout the course of the season, there is some talent discrepancies. But when you play really hard and you play really physical, you've got a chance to be in every game that you play.
You talk about buying Kendall Moore, of a fifth-year senior that didn't know if he'd ever see a football, and then you think of Chris Warren. I mean, 2 years ago Friday, he's running for 277 yards against Tech. Now he's your H-back and your tight end, and he makes a huge play in that ball game. And obviously, he's become a weapon again. He
has, and this is a guy. I have had multiple conversations with him, and very pragmatic guy. He said, Coach, I get it. And he said, as a running back, we're judged by numbers, and you can't make excuses. In regards to what's in front of you, he understood us needing to play those young guys a little bit more, but he wanted to help his team win. And to be honest with you, he's as good at that kind of move tight end position for as little time as he's had. He's as good as I've seen. You're talking about a 6'2", 250-pound kid that can bend. Run. He's got great hips. He's physical, and so I think also I think there's a long-term deal here too, where I think Chris probably sees this is if I'm going to make money playing this game someday, this is probably where I'm going to end up anyways, and so it's been a very welcome addition to the offense here, kind of late in the season, to have him be able to give us those quality. Reps that he's given us the last few games.
Well, you finish it off. You do what you've talked about all season. That's kind of breaking through that barrier with the win. Tell me about the locker room, because as a coach, you talk about it. You're as hard as anybody is on these guys, but to see that joy and satisfaction must have been special.
It was, and it took me by surprise a little bit, and because I had fallen into the trap of, when you're at Texas. You think, going to a bowl game is the minimum standard around here. But this is a group of guys that haven't experienced that. And to know that they're going to a bowl game for the first time in 3 years, and I know for us it's like, we're Texas. We expect that. Well, yeah, we expected it the last 3 years, and it didn't come to fruition. And so these guys, especially the old guys, I mean, the two guys I think about in that locker room looking on it was Poona Ford and Nashawn Hughes. Poona Ford, you couldn't if you told him somebody had killed his dog, he wouldn't have stopped smiling. I mean, the guy was ear to ear smiling, happy. And in that moment, I realized, these are 21, 22-year-old kids that get to do something around here that hadn't been done in a long time. And they get to keep playing football. They get to enjoy the spoils of going to a bowl game. And so I know at some point we'll get us back to where, hey, winning 6 games, happens right around week 6 or week 7. But right now, we'll take this kind of improvement and this kind of joy and elation, especially from these old guys, because they deserve it.
We'll talk more about the seniors. It is their night on Friday, but it is not their final game, as you mentioned. Longhorn Weekly with Tom Herman continues from Pluckers. It's presented by the Texas Lottery. Welcome back. I want to remind you our guests each week presented by ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Back with Tom Herman. We've got another special guest, but I think he'll just be seen. That's young Maverick, one of Tom's 3 children. Here we go.
Can you say hook 'em horns?
Hook 'em horns. There we go.
There you go.
Nice. Well, it's a good time to talk about this week because it is Thanksgiving week, and I know you're fortunate enough you can carve out a little time around the show, and other times with
nothing I'd rather be doing than be here at Pluckers with you, Roger.
I appreciate that.
Off.
Right back at you.
Yep.
But you mentioned the other day that Thanksgiving to you has a different meaning since you've gotten into football, but still, football team, coaches, families like that, a chance to reflect a little bit maybe for 30 seconds as we get ready for Friday's game. Yeah,
well, I think one of the neat things we had talked about, the experience that we have playing on the Friday of Thanksgiving, and one of the things that's really neat that we do is obviously there's no school today, so we practiced in the morning this morning. That's why I'm still in a sweatshirt and the whole nine. But and then our guys are off, and we give them a 3-hour radius. So basically, the Metroplex or Houston area guys can go home. They don't have to be back at the facility till noon tomorrow. But then the really cool thing that I think we do that is unique to our program, tomorrow night, obviously we play on Friday, so we'll be in a hotel tomorrow night. Instead of our normal Friday night meal, we actually invite every parent, every family, all of our coaches and staff's family, and we have a giant Thanksgiving meal, dinner at the hotel. And then we allow our kids to kind of hang out with their families, our players, that is, to hang out with their families for a little bit at the hotel, and then say goodbye to their families, and then we kind of get into our normal night before the game routine. But it is something that what we do is too hard as players and coaches, and especially coaches that have wives and kids, and they don't get to spend a lot of time with them most of the year. And so anytime a guy wants to bring his kid to the office, or anytime we have an opportunity to spend time with our families and kind of be able to interweave it into what we do for a living, I think we need to take every opportunity that we have to do that.
Oh, with some cool pictures on social media on Fridays before home games when we get to take the family out on the field, and that looks like a lot of fun and probably brings you back to the ground a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
What it's all about.
No doubt.
All right, let's move on to getting ready for a Texas Tech team that, as you said, they're going to come in here hungry.
Yeah, this they're in a fight for their postseason life as well, and so if they beat us, they're going to a bowl game, and so this is a really important game for them. This is a good football team, one that has played everybody close, and has only pulled out a couple wins in conference, but they went undefeated in their non-conference schedule, and their quarterback is one of the best in the country in terms of not just numbers, but in terms of talent, and he's extremely accurate, and his timing is what really impresses me. You can tell he's really familiar with that offense and has a good feel for it. And then defensively, they're very multiple. They're going to line up in a 3-man front, but bring a lot of blitzes from different places. So this will be a good test for us, and one that we need to continue the momentum that we have. I rattled off some stats that John Bianco gave me. I rattled some of those off at my Monday press conference, and it's it's where we are, but we have a lot to accomplish still. I mean, the University of Texas hasn't won its last 3 games of the season since 2009 when they played for national championship. We haven't, I think we've had a losing record in November for the last few years, and we've got an opportunity to win 7 in the regular season, which hasn't been done around here since 2013. We've got a chance to have a winning record at home. We've got a chance to win 6 Big 12 games, which hasn't happened here in a long, long time. So there's a lot at stake for us too, and but we understand it's going to be a tough road to hoe against Texas Tech, especially knowing the circumstances that they're in.
As you're growing up through the ranks as an offensive guy and the spread and the air raid, and you're trying to decide what your identity is, what did Mike Leach and Hal Mumme and those guys do to – it's not just change college football, but we see more and more principles at the pro level. Reluctantly, they act like they invented it when they do it, but how do you kind of shape your way of thinking?
Well, I think what they made popular and feasible and understandable was the short and intermediate pass game, where it used to be if you were a pro-style offense, that meant you ran the football and then you play action pass and threw it deep, where these guys really mastered the art of drags and bubbles and hitches and quick game and getting the ball out of the quarterback's hand really, really quickly. And so I think there's elements now. There's a lot of Coach Leach and his and Hal Mumme really kind of are the 2 forefathers of the air raid system, and they've got a lot of different branches, and some guys have started running the ball a little bit more. Coach Leach, he's still throwing it 60, 70, 80 times a game, but he proved that you can win doing that if you're good at it. And so, but I think the elements of the short and intermediate pass games that are the things that kind of everybody took from those guys.
They kind of use that as the extension of their run game, the simple stuff. But, man, the term in space, that's such a common term, and a lot of that's from that offense.
Correct, yeah. I mean, they and we have adopted this philosophy too, that the field is 120 yards long and it's 53 1/3 yards wide, and they only have 11 human beings on defense to cover that. And so we want to maximize all of the space on the field because offensive football, even a one-on-one matchup is a good matchup, especially in the open field without other bodies around you.
All right, we're going to continue here from Pluckers with head coach Tom Herman as we are presented by the Texas Lottery.
In the shotgun, Kennedy McCoy offset to his right. Chugginoff, back to throw. Pressure coming. Fires for the end zone. Got a man open. Tipped away. Oh, what a play made by Deshaun Elliott. Tipped it away in the end zone. And the Longhorns take over at the 24-yard line.
Just another great play in that Texas win over West Virginia. Welcome back. Roger Wallace sitting in for Craig Way. He's in Portland, by the way. Longhorn basketball team plays tomorrow night in that PK80 Invitational against Butler. Back with Tom Herman and Deshaun Elliott. My goodness. I mean, not just the picks and the pick six, but that play right there, that looked like an effort play to me.
Yeah, that was a busted coverage, and he cleaned up somebody's mess. Let's put it that way, somebody else's mess, and to just have the wherewithal and kind of there's just some guys that have that ability to see the whole game, see the whole field, and he realized what was happening and stuck his foot in the ground and, did his, ran as hard as he could to try to get a fingertip on the ball, and he did, and that was a huge play for us. And Deshaun's having a great year. I mean, there's no reason, it's no surprise that he is one of the 3 finalists for the Thorpe Award. I can't imagine. Again, it's hard for me to follow college football because you just get so wrapped up in your own team. But it's hard for me to imagine another DB in the country having a better season than Deshaun.
I know you play to win, and then everything else takes care of itself. But to have a Thorpe Award finalist, to have a Ray Guy Award finalist, I mean, every time you can get Texas's name out there in different ways, it's got to help, and it's pretty cool to have 2 of these guys that are going to be in Atlanta.
Oh, no doubt. I think, and You know, that's a credit to Deshaun, obviously, and the hard work that he's put in. But I think anytime you can show recruits, I mean, because recruiting is the name of the game, and we got to get the best players in the country to come to the University of Texas. And anytime that you can show a recruit that, hey, in just 1 year, you know, last I checked, Deshaun wasn't a Thorpe Award finalist last year, but in just 1 year, under Todd Orlando in this defense and Craig Niver and Jason Washington, our DB's coaches, that, you know, this guy's having a heck of a season. He's only a junior, you know, and so he's going to have an opportunity in this defense to repeat that. And then just having that brand, you know, whether it's the punter for the Ray Guy deal or Deshaun for the
Who for the Ray Guy?
The punter.
Okay.
The punter.
So his first name's the.
Yes, correct. He, what a weapon. I mean, we can transition into that. I mean, that kid is as good as there is in the country. He's as good as I've ever seen.
Can I say his name?
You can say his name all you want.
Michael Dixon.
Yeah, great.
Again, though, it is rather remarkable when an opposing head coach says the punter almost beat us, like Mike Gundy said. And I think he's totally serious.
Yeah, he is. I didn't realize he had said that, but he can change a game a lot like any skilled athlete. I mean, I know our defensive coaches are going to be really sad when he graduates, because it's a weapon on defense to basically the entire season be playing with a long field. And, you know, the statistics will tell you that, you know, it's a lot harder to score when you start at the -10 as opposed to when you start at the -30 or -40. And so what he is able to do in pinning guys deep when drives stall around midfield, but also when offensive drives stall back deep, he can flip the field, you know, with a 60, 70-yard bomb too. And so we're blessed to have him. He is a fantastic player, and you know, I'm glad we have him for another year.
I mean, touchdowns are great and picks, but man, that play when Chris Boyd runs in stride and catches that,
it's like he threw him the ball.
Line,
I know.
I mean, that's a thing of beauty. And I mean, this is a guy that had a rocky start. Everybody knows what happened in that Oklahoma State game his freshman year, but the talent he had, not just booming, but the way he can kind of maneuver a ball like a golf ball.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, it's like Sevi Ballesteros, right? I mean, he can make a football talk, you know, and he's got tremendous accuracy, and which is weird to say from a punter, but he's got tremendous accuracy when it comes to those kill punts, but he also has the giant leg that you know, when you are backed up, he can flip the field.
If only the holding call hadn't been called at USC, he would have had that first down.
That's right, and it was one that didn't affect the play. But
I did not mean to walk you into that.
Yeah, thanks.
The defense, because we started with the Deshaun, and you guys have taken some hits on defense. Seemed like first part of the year was all about the offense suffering through injuries. Now the defense has had its issues. And I think of a guy like Gary Johnson, just another kid that kind of had to find his way onto the depth chart. Now JUCO doesn't have that luxury to, you know, kind of ease into the program, and he's fought his way into being a key player.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He's you know, was a stalwart on special teams for us early in the year, and we knew there was something there. I mean, this is a guy that has tremendous speed and is really, really physical, loves throwing his body around, loves hitting people. But, you know, it's very difficult when you don't come in until training camp as a junior college kid to get acclimated into, you know, big-time college football defense. And so it took him a while to kind of learn and find his way at that linebacker position. But once he was able to get his shot, you know, he has really, really shown.
When a guy like Malik is playing so well, does it make it easier for him to also be that leader?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's really difficult to lead when you're not playing well. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that all your great players are going to be great leaders, but all of your great leaders have been really good players. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard to lead from the bench, and it's hard to lead when you don't have your house in order. And so he's still improving weekly. Malik will tell you that, I mean, there's the perfect football game has yet to be played, and he's certainly nowhere near it, and he's striving for it each and every week. But the one thing I credit a lot of how hard we're playing on defense to Malik Jefferson, because he bought in. He was one of the first to buy in to Todd Orlando and his way of doing things and our way of doing things. And when a guy like that, who is arguably your best player on defense, plays with the intensity level that he's playing, it becomes contagious. And so it's fun to watch the season that he's having, and we're going to need him Friday night too.
Yeah, no doubt about it against Tech. All right, we're going to continue to get a little closer to that ball game as we continue live from Pluckers. Tom Herman Longhorn Weekly with Tom Herman at the West Campus location continues. All right, welcome back. Longhorn Weekly with Tom Herman continues from Pluckers, and we're going to go a little no huddle right here.
Okay.
And fly through it. Let's talk a little offense.
Okay.
And the running back position has been one where you guys have been kind of playing that shell game, trying to figure out where it is, and boy, it looked good on Saturday.
It did, and that's a position that's very interdependent upon the guys in front of them. And you plug and play one of the best in the country at left tackle back in the lineup, and all of a sudden, hey, you found the running game again.
That's right.
Like, no, we found the really good player that helps run the football, and so they were certainly the beneficiaries of that. I thought Tim Beck and the offensive staff had a great plan to attack West Virginia's very unique 3-3 stack defense, and the running backs did their part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they found the holes, they exploded through them, they made quick, decisive decisions, and we're getting better at that position each week.
You're saying if you want great both, but if great offensive line, great back, offensive line can make an average back look good. An average back can't make a bad offensive line look good.
Bingo. Yes. You win this game
All
still
right.
to this day up front.
Inside out, right?
Correct.
Danny Young, Tennille Carter, the two freshmen, Kyle Porter.
Kyle had a really good game.
Got into the end zone, and I know you're going to lean on those three guys on Friday and beyond.
Yeah, we need to continue getting better at running the football. It's certainly been an area of weakness for us, but one that I think the last couple of weeks we've seen some market improvement. Certainly, like we said, it helps when Connor's back, but Connor's not going to be there forever either, and everybody's got to do their part in getting better at it, and I think we're on our way.
We've gone 55 minutes without mentioning the word quarterback.
I'm appreciative of that.
Sam looked comfortable in the bad weather, the cold weather, the rain, and he's just kind of doing his thing. And I know that you're going to have to live with the mistakes along the way, but
No, you're not.
well, you're here, so you made it through.
We did, yeah. It's a lot better learning lessons in a win than in a loss like we had to endure at Oklahoma State. But we might not have been in that game or this game without him. And so, and Shane's playing well. I mean, this is not. I mean, he had a couple drops on one of his drive, a beautifully thrown football on third down that was. John Burt had, and it was in a ton of traffic, and the rain, kind of slipped out of his hands. West Virginia was dealing with some drops early in the game too, but so Shane's going to play again this week too, and we'll start Sam and jog Shane in and see if he can get anything going too, because he's a guy that does bring a lot of good stuff to the table too, as well as Sam.
All right, we'll wrap it up next segment with Tom Herman. It's presented by the Texas Lottery. Welcome back. Well, that's going to do it for us as the Longhorns get ready for senior night against Texas Tech, 7 o'clock, and then we'll find out where they're going bowling. Big thanks to Tom Herman, because it's his show. I'm Roger Wallace, sitting in for Craig Way. So long from the Pluckers on West Campus.